The most alluring moments might not be the ones we dream of happening, but the ones we dream of having happened. Sure, the future has the possibility for almost anything in it, an open book that we take part in writing as we see fit, but those options can be overwhelming. That task can be too daunting. To be totally in control of our lives often leads to the wish for a guide, and that's where the past steps in. We like to think of it as said and done, but really the past is malleable. Some details remain limited in a pleasing way, the time and place, the sights and the conversations, playing backdrop to the others which drag us in with their possibilities, the thoughts and feelings, the meaning behind the words. We can get lost in those options more than the futures because they're so limited, because that provides us a path to follow rather than wandering in the dark. The answers aren't yet to be written, they're there somewhere just out of reach, and all we have to do is find them, reach a little bit further, and finally grasp them. Possibilities with an end, that's what the past offers us, what entices us so much. It takes an almost constant effort to resist this, and its nearly cinematic appeal, dramatic jazz, dim lighting, a drink in hand, and eyes unfocused, staring through the world to some point long ago. This feeling of rumination is nearly universal, and probably a large reason for the enduring popularity of Cowboy Bebop, the quintessential 90s anime. Cool guy Spike Spiegel, grizzled Jet Black, Lady Luck, Faye Valentine, and hacker Radical Edward with companion Smart Dog Ein, they all drift through space alone together, collecting bounties through the solar system and almost dripping with false maturity as they try and fail to move on from the past, save those last two who actually do. But they aren't the only outliers, as Jet stands distinct from the other adult members of the Bebop crew. Spike and Faye are magnets for trouble, rushing into dangerous situations time and time again with little to no planning, whether it's for a big bounty relying on charm, or for a past rival relying on weapons. And Ed and Ein, well, they just go wherever their hearts tell them. There's hardly an ounce of care between the others, something Jet has in excess, urging them not to do as they will time and time again, and always seen gathering information before he acts. Just think about the first episode. Spike goes right up to the bounty to draw confirmation out of trouble and pays the price, while Jet stops into local bars asking for information first, the kinds of places where their bounty might sell the product he stole. Or there's when Spike faces off against Mad Perot, and Jet comes in at the end to give Spike the researched information he needs to kill the madman after it's already done. Sure, it can be played off as a joke, this now overly dramatic reveal and pointless info, but if Spike had held back and played it safe, they would have ended up in the same spot, right? Sure, it would be a bit slower, but much safer. After all, how many times is Spike injured compared to Jet? And how much value does he have in a full house-sized ship compared to how little Faye and Spike have in, well, anything? Ness's former partner Elisa states to sum him up,
"You decided everything. In the end, you were always right."
The point is, Jet is the careful, cautious type, often expressing a maturity that would have saved the others a lot of pain. He learns from his past, a template for safe actions in the future. But despite common knowledge, maybe that's not always for the best. On brand for the show, this is Jet's obsession with the past. Certainty. He'll hardly do anything that he can't predict the outcome of, something that hasn't already been done or that he's been given a guarantee on if he can help it. Just as Elisa's quote speaks to how Jet's methods work, the way their breakup leaves him speaks to the many ways in which they fail. As far as he knew, everything between them was great, a perfect relationship where the best detective on the force came home to a beautiful woman, where neither of them fought or struggled for anything. But that's all until one day all he finds waiting is a watch and a note with one word: farewell. He hangs around until the watch stops to see if she'll return with answers, and when she doesn't, he leaves his life behind to start somewhere else. They never meet again until what we witness in the show. Normally, this is a painful thing, of course, but Jet describes it in an odd way, saying,
"I didn't feel sad or broken up, and little by little I felt something inside of me go numb."
And I think that speaks volumes, that the issue wasn't pain, but that the issue was the lack of answers because it messes with his methods, the only way he knows how to function. Normally, he's right from something to go on, evidence left behind creating a trail, former successes and failures alike showing what does and doesn't work and why. If you know which shops buy stolen goods, you can catch thieves easier. If you do a stakeout, you can catch the bad guy when they're unprepared and face no danger. But here, with the breakup, there's nothing, no intel to collect, just an abrupt end. Things went wrong with no signs as to why, and if it seemed so perfect up until that point, he can't even guess as to what went wrong. It all leaves closeness to others as a mystery, a risk. With no information, how can you do it better next time? This is exactly why he drifts along in space on a ship much too big for one person, slowly picking up this ragtag team to fill it, but never actually confirming their closeness, their feelings. Because he can never do deep connection again until he knows how it went wrong before. For Jet, the past must be solved to create a path to the future. This is the major flaw of his methods. Yes, they work great when you actually have all the information, but when you don't, like with Elisa, what it creates is inaction, a pile of cold cases on the desk, and a refusal to take on something like it until that one guides you to a better method. Because why would you get into a relationship now when you could understand them better to have a greater one in the future? Instead of a bit of thought to past mistakes guiding better actions, it's way too much thought to past mistakes preventing anything from seeming worthwhile. Because think about what this requires. A solution demands a problem. A problem means something negative. It makes him ruminate on not the best times, but the worst ones. Not all of the happy memories before abandonment, but just abandonment itself. Wasted time, energy, commitment, the way his plans all fell apart due to someone else's will. It begins to make that connection entirely unappealing by highlighting all of its risks, like time, emotion, dependence on another created in a relationship, focusing on everything bad to search for a non-existent answer for so long that everything about this becomes illogical and excluded, vividly awful on how much they've been thought over. Even though there were hundreds of embraces and only one act of leaving, searching for an answer has made the latter the summary of it all. When there's no answer, Jet's methods just mean dulling every option that didn't go exactly right, slowly becoming more and more limited. And this is a guarantee because when are people simple enough to truly have an answer? The show gives us a great example of this when he and Elisa meet again. Of course, Jet asks why she left him all those years ago. I mean, he's still so hung up on this little stare at the watch all these years later. But she only responds,
That's a story from long ago, and I've forgotten about it.
That alone would be enough. Memory is unreliable. Once the moment passes, the answer slowly becomes either untrue or non-existent. But it goes further, as later in the episode she says to him,
Stop protecting me! That's just how you were back then. All I had to do was to hang on to your arm like a child.
That is the really interesting part, because I don't think she was trying to spare his feelings when she said she forgot earlier. It's just that human memory and emotion are so complicated. Sitting in that bar resting, she's so far detached from the time they spent together that she has no frame of reference to recall something felt so many years before. No one would. For the most part, we simply guess as to our reasonings in the past because the conditions once creating it are gone. The pathways which once established the evidence aren't bright enough to follow. Just like everything you learned years ago in school, you can recall the header, but not the text itself, the indication of knowledge with no follow-through. But when it comes to light that Alyssa is dating a bounty head in Rent, this leads to Jet chasing her down, crashing their ship, and then scolding her for how foolish a decision she's making. It leads to Jet controlling the situation. From this, all the thoughts and feelings she had when leaving Jet return, because this is the past itself, being led around by the choices he made.
I wanted to live my own life, make my own decisions.
She couldn't remember how it felt until she felt it. Sights and sounds and smells, so much goes into creating what and how we feel in that moment, which codes both how we'll remember and express it. It all just as easily could have come back if Jet offered to take her out to a meal and chose the place and the dishes, but it wouldn't have come out with that force. Maybe it would have been with a smile and a laugh instead, changing how it would impact him from what it felt necessary to include. The answer would change. Maybe after a pleasant evening, where it wasn't so bad to be led around just for once, she would have made up something else to spare his feelings even, a lie he could take as truth. The answer would change. The point is, we're unpredictable, unreliable narrators. Half the time we won't give each other certainty, and the other half of the time we don't know well enough to actually do so, changing the evidence from moment to moment. When we consider this, we know that where Jet is during the show is the natural conclusion to his methods, floating alone. The other humans just aren't certain enough for any other outcome. But that outburst Elisa has isn't just about the inaccuracy of human memory and feeling, but how that inaccuracy is kind of the point. If one never forgets, one never makes space for something new. In that time that Jet's been gone, she hasn't exactly done great. She does own a tavern, but it's not doing well out on the forgotten docks of Ganymede post-recession. Soon she'll probably have to pack up and try somewhere, if not something else. When she does, she'll have Rint, maybe not the best person, a man younger than her and still with a lot to learn, but capable of learning all that, of becoming the support that her dreams might need. Hell, even Jet thinks he could get through prison fine given they find his crime to be one of self-defense, and he just showed the vigor of youth and how fully he ran away. A coward now could easily become a hard worker when that energy is better focused. Point is, for Elisa, things aren't strictly better after leaving Jet, but they are different, and different means the chance for them to get better. You can imagine a future where her bar is successful as can be, run by a beautiful pair acting as the envy of the town. In forgetting why she left Jet all those years ago, Elisa made room for new things, made room for potential, for a real future that she decides on her own, better or worse. Jet, in keeping that case open, is waiting so long for an answer which requires keeping it in his mind, brooding over it. He simply never had the room for a new relationship. Bring in someone else and make new memories that might push out the evidence he needs to solve the past? That's out of the question. After 26 episodes of Jet, I hardly ever imagined a better future for him, because what has he done in all those years since? What possibilities does he have? Flying home? Yes, more than his companions, but that's all in comparison. It's still an old bucket of bolts that drifts around from place to place, too big and empty with no partner but just fleeting connections, making beef in bell peppers with no beef. Looking for all these certainties in the past before moving into the future, well, that itself says it all. Things will never get better for him because they don't change. The only option is for them to degrade, like he did from the ace detective to a struggling cowboy. That's the life cycle of all things, degradation. Buildings, ships, people, connections, they all eventually fade into dust. The only option you have to have anything at all is to have uncertainty as well, all the mistakes that come along with it. And isn't that kind of a good thing? I mean, mistakes are how Jet's methods began, right? No one comes into the world having all of the answers, and there's no way for someone from a world that once was to teach them everything about the one that now is. Hell, even science is just observing what happens and writing it down, many of the greatest discoveries starting as mistakes or guesses. To find the few shops which did buy stolen goods, Jet had to find all the ones which didn't just the same. To know which alleys acted as shortcuts to catch criminals, he had to first get burned by them being used against him. He sees where he failed and he learns not to next time. This is how he ended up able to be always right. But that just creates a duality where always right is the same as never learning something new. Once he builds up enough knowledge to make certain decisions, and once he gets used to being that way, that's who he is. Forever a man stuck in time in a world moving forward. Everything around him and his knowledge will change, and yet he'll be there knowing none of it, moving from together on a planet to alone on a planet to alone in space, slowly more and more isolated in how little of this world he understands. Knowing everything for certain eventually means knowing nothing. To cast off mistakes is to cast off knowledge. Learning from the past is a method meant to have no end, because having an end makes it defeat itself like this. But he puts an end to it anyway because there is something that it offers, something that's the real point of his methods, an escape from pain. One of the most interesting aspects of that episode is how easily Jet finds Elisa. Heading to Ganymede to drop off a bounty head, an old friend who's still on the police force just happens to be the one running the control tower permitting their landing. And in conversation about the past, she comes up, along with her location and how she's been doing. That's all it took, one man on the police force. At any point, a well-liked and respected figure like Jet could have gone to any of these connections and asked how she was doing, could have found her and gotten his answers as to why. I mean, he himself was a cop, and he has tracked bounty heads across the goddamn solar system, yet he never tried to find her. Now, I understand leaving it up to her. It wouldn't have actually been the classiest move to track her down, a bit creepy at best and an abuse of power at worst, but I also don't think that was really the reason coming from an old-fashioned man who, quote,
"Women are hopeless. They don't work on reason."
The real reason was to leave it unconfirmed, to create an airtight, logical excuse to never feel this way again once the moment fades. To say that a smart man is one who learns from the past, who takes guaranteed options in the safe bets, knowing everyone will agree, and then let everything you can that can sting you be classified as one of those unsolvable mysteries so that they never need to be risked. That's why he's really obsessed with the past. Unchanging comfort. The flaw has been the point. We see an evolution of this in his second dedicated episode, where his logic really confronts itself in obvious ways. It starts with a confrontation between he and Faye. She says he should get his arm repaired, that metal one that can't feel a cigarette burning down onto it, because reconstructive surgery is cheap anymore. Why would anyone keep an unnatural body part that draws bad attention and needs extra work? But he responds angrily, saying that this hunk of metal is his arm. This combines with something he says to Spike in a prior episode, trying to turn his friend away from danger and making the mistake of rushing into it.
"This is what I paid, yeah, for being too gung-ho and running ahead of the game."
Together, we get the full picture. He willingly keeps this arm like this as a reminder of that mistake, of the one time where he acted like Spike does now and rushed right into danger, and how it backfired, a setup which cost him his arm and his faith in the police alike. To be fair to him, it is an effective strategy because it means he can never forget the lesson when heading into possible danger, because he needs that arm for fighting. When he goes to pick up his gun to go fight, the first thought will be, my arm. Let's not rush this. And we see this in how he addresses danger then versus now. Next time he's tracking down a criminal like that, searching for Faye's kidnapper, he's not busting down doors and through walls, but carefully checking corners, even though this time it's much less danger, not a legendary assassin, but a saxophone player. It shows that his methods don't have to be terrible. Having this arm where cigarettes burning down to his hand without feeling is a reminder. Where having to repair it is a reminder. Where blocking bullets with it is a reminder. That past mistake is always in his mind, and so he never forgets the caution it taught him either. It corrects something humans are often terrible with, having to relearn the same lessons, the shortness of our memory. But of course, it's a good thing taken too far. Because while it may steer him away from danger, it also directs him right back into the worst of it. Sure, when the chance to chase down that legendary assassin Uday, who was part of that setup, comes along, he can say,
"It's just old news. It doesn't interest me anymore."
But does he really mean it? The pauses in his speech, his serious look, the case files he still keeps in his silence as he broods over them, he isn't actually over this moment because how could he be? It is literally a part of everything he does, his physical interaction with the world and his arm. How can you be over something when it's on your body so prominently, when the point he expressly said about it was that it stayed on his mind? This isn't a source for a better future, this is tainting everything which follows with the past. He's trying to have it both ways, use it as a reminder yet forget it at once, in line with using the past as an excuse. It sounds great and mature to say to Spike that it's a reminder, that he keeps it because it's an incarnation of wisdom, but in reality it's just obsession with prettier words. Jet isn't more mature than the others. After all, he fails to say the important things just like them. He's just learned how to look more mature in what he does say. And this contradiction is the dangerous part, because in saying it's made him more mature and safe, it allows him to be thrust right back into danger without ever truly being so. When that chance to chase Udai comes up, it takes maybe only an hour or two to go from him denying it to flying away from the Bebop once again to accept it, no amount of preparation, no knowledge, no plan, to board a prison ship where all the guards have been overwhelmed and killed by dangerous convicts, including the most dangerous assassin he's ever known. Undeniably, it is a terrible, stupid idea to go in rather than waiting for a much larger force to take care of it, one which does show up when he's done. But he does so anyway because he's obsessed and wants to do it himself, and it's now or never. Literally, because the police are planning how to do it properly, he does it improperly. He knows better, and even knows he knows better because, as he says,
I didn't want to come, but something else insisted. The arm I lost because of you.
The very thing he used to tell Spike to avoid danger is the reason why he comes back to face it, earning one of only 2 injuries he faces in the entire show, and the only one which is truly his fault. It's impossible to say those words were true when we consider all of this. It's just, he said them because they sounded mature. But that's Cowboy Bebop. The child Ed is more mature than all these brooding adults. In the most irony of all for Jet's case though, this was actually a setup. Fod, his old partner who eggs him along the whole time into this, was the reason Jet lost his arm, literally firing the shot that did it, because he was corrupt and Jet was a good cop getting too close to the Force's secrets. Udai knows about this, and so Fod has to ensure he dies before the police force in general can get a hold of him again, because now he doesn't have the backing of a syndicate, and so Udai might talk for a better sentence. And so, to try and avoid this, Fod drags Jet in as backup and distraction. When this all does come to light, he accepts death to have his reputation secured, and Jet walks out alive. But the fact is, a reminder of once being set up led to the only time he was set up again. It didn't make him smarter, it made him easier to manipulate. Too much of any good thing is a bad thing. Keeping too many reminders of your mistakes, and mistakes is all you have, doomed in obsession to repeat them. Fortunately, we do see some bright spots in Jet's story, where witnessing both his own current mistakes and the beginnings of them in someone else helps him grow just a bit for the first time in years. It starts with a cryptic message from an old acquaintance, a man named Powell, who he tracks down rather easily, to a grave, that is. But there at the same time is his daughter Mayfa, as well as some gangsters trying to track down Powell with force if necessary. Given the message was asking to be found and others are trying too, he's clearly still out there somewhere and his daughter really wants to know where. Now, the thing about all of this is that Jet admits he really didn't know Powell all that well. He was truly an acquaintance at best, and the situation is a rather dangerous one. The best thing he could do is just leave this all behind him. Like he says,
I could have just blown the whole thing off. I didn't owe any favors to Powell or the girl.
So why does Jet end up helping Mayfa in this quest? Well, it probably is because of those dangling questions, but maybe not in the way he thought. Because he and Mayfa are more similar than a quick glance would lead you to believe. She isn't working from the past exactly, hell, she barely has one at her age, but she does operate mostly from a kind of certainty. Feng Shui. When they go to run away, she first feels out the energy of the situation and leads them from that. When they want to find something, she follows ancient wisdom, not searching head up, but following head down. She might not be playing it as safe and static, but the makings of Jet's methods are there, especially when, talking about her father on the Bebop, she remarks,
I don't know why he sent that message to you, and not to me. He never tried once in all those years. I'm sure that he could have found me. It wouldn't have been all that hard, you know?
That last question should sound a bit familiar. Jet knows what a hanging doubt like that can do to someone, the obsession and what it costs. Each moment she stews about her father is another moment less making something new in the future. Each action defining him is one less defining someone new. What connections would never be made? What memories will die in unrealized possibility? Eventually she would be left with nothing. And so Jet wants to prevent that, let someone with such a lengthy future ahead of her still have one. And that means embracing what he avoided, taking the pain on here and now instead of avoiding it, because that's what moving on is. The unanswered questions are a key part in avoiding pain, or at least avoiding all of it, letting a slow drip substitute in for a rushing current. It's the confirmation, the crushing of imagination which really hurts. I mean, think about it. So long as Jet waited around in that same spot for Elisa, she could find him if she wanted. She could come back and say it was all a mistake even. We know that would never happen, but the slight possibility of it, the ability to dream about it, it lessened how much it hurt. Never knowing why she left him, it let anything be the answer in his mind, things that both would and wouldn't hurt to imagine. I mean, maybe it didn't even have anything to do with him. It could have just been another man, or maybe bad timing related to something about family. Sure, the carousel of these thoughts will hurt, but slowly, over time on long nights starting at the watch, a feeling he can pick and choose, not the rush of emotions that hearing, "I left you because you treated me like a child," would create. With no definitive end, the imagination can much more easily cope. Clearly, we know how this traps someone. We covered that already. But what we haven't yet covered is how they get free, being insulted. At least in Jet's case, that's what it was. The watch he kept was like the arm, a reminder, but also it was those few possibilities he kept, ones about the past. I guess that's the summary of Jet. All his possibilities are in the past. Unconfirmed, this watch, can sit there to let his mind think whatever it likes, so he always keeps it, something both good and bad. He only finds himself able to throw it away, tossed unceremoniously into the water, once Alyssa says this to him upon presenting it.
You seem to think that time really has stopped here. Time never stands still.
As well as the argument which followed for more detail. She made it into a dig at him, that it's silly for him to come here looking for answers for something so long ago, because there's no way she'd remember, because why would it even matter all this time later? A stopped watch is pointless, unable to do the one thing it's meant to do, so why the hell does he still have it? It's laughable. He's been carrying around something literally useless all this time. That should sting a bit to him. Her words later should cut deep, because that's what allows these objects, these memories, to finally be seen for what they are, long gone and pointless. A broken watch with possibilities to explain the past is important, but a broken watch that's an insult, well, that's just trash. Properly punctuated by a pain which confirms the moment, it finally gets seen for the junk it is and tossed to make room for him to carry something else around instead. Maybe one that actually works. Truly solving a problem like this needs to hurt, so that these objects and memories can't sit around forever in useless past possibilities taking up space. They need to be made awful so that they want to be dropped. So, recognizing this all, what he's trying to do is, in a way, let Mayfa get hurt by Pow. They do eventually find him, in a convoluted series of events, blowing a hole into the gateway space where he's trapped just long enough to say a little bit before he passes. And part of that is taking some unnecessary credit that his use of Feng Shui led them to this point where he could say goodbye. It was all Pow's doing. But this is thankfully rejected by Jet, who speaks up to say, "You weren't in control of this operation."
Mayfa is here now because she wanted to find you.
It's a rejection of certainty, that this outcome wasn't dictated from anything he set into motion, but that it was brought about in this moment from his daughter's actions, a will to find him, not a will to be found. That there's no mystical force to look to for answers to everything. That total certainty is a foolish and reductive task. Believing in such a thing often means reducing the human will to overcome that uncertainty for the future we desire, and so the idea probably should be cast off if we truly care about the meaning behind it. But back to pain. This meeting also provides that one answer that it can. From trying to get Mayfa here, it's clear that Jet was right when saying Pow was distant because of his mafia connections. He didn't want his wife and daughter to get wrapped up in all of that. It wasn't negligence, it was a careful consideration, and you can only say goodbye now because they have no need to terrorize the family of a dead man. The danger is gone. And that, well, it's kind of the most painful outcome for Mayfa. It would have been easier to find out that he didn't care, that he was just a truly awful man, but to know that he did, it means she could have had a great relationship with him, but that it just never came to be from things beyond her control. Those past possibilities, the hanging questions, are all stamped out to just one, and it's the most painful. It leads her to say,
I hated you for all those years. It hurt so much. But now I don't.
Years of lost love become confirmed in an instant, and she cries. Not hollow like Jet when Alyssa left, but open and honest to the moment. Open to moving on from the moment once that emotion becomes exhausting. Once it served its purpose, punctuated the moment not just as it ended, but as important. A lost bond between father and daughter, that's something that should be cried over. That human pain is the cost of importance. She has to be able to feel something negative about it because something positive was lost. You don't have one without the other. And so when Jet never cried over Lisa, what he was really doing was saying it never mattered. He was insulting his past more than anyone else. If you want to celebrate that lost joy, then cry. Cry until it's exhausting and use that energy for its purpose until it has none. As the short outro shows, this does let Mayfa move on in a healthy way, the best balance of all we've learned. She'll visit his grave with flowers, but she won't sit there all day and brood over it like Jet did with the watch and the arm. It just becomes one distinct, finalized time in the past, a reminder of where she came from, but not where she'll go. A part of her, not all of her. The lesson is a bit late for Jet, but it makes her future possible at least. I guess that's one bit of hope. Even if we get the memo late, we can try and pass it on to others. We can always make the world a bit better from what we learn. I think that learning this lesson and putting it into practice with someone else explains Jet's role in the end of Cowboy Bebop as well. That is, not really having one. Truly becoming more mature, if not totally so. Think about how he reacted when Spike ran after Julia halfway through the series. He didn't just desperately try to talk him out of it, he actively tried to manipulate it so that Spike couldn't leave, saying he wouldn't let him come back, shocked when Spike actually calls his bluff, and shouting good riddance the whole way. One pleading and shouting and one ignoring, it's like two kids fighting. But then in the final episodes when Spike does the same thing, Jet responds calmly, trying to advise him against it, yes, but when push comes to shove and they're being attacked by the Red Dragons, now led by Spike's rival Vicious, Jet simply says,
"Don't worry about us, just go. Find what you lost and get it back."
The response is to an even more dangerous situation than before, but there isn't a hint of that immaturity that he showed before. And it's because he knows that all of this exists in that other man still. The path to Jet's understanding wasn't pretty. It was full of ups and downs, knowledge gathered through force and loss, confrontation with the past itself, and the pain coming from that able to kill it and move on. He didn't learn the lesson through advice and guarantees, he learned it through terrible experience. How could he say not to go through with this when he himself chased down Uday onto a ship full of bloodthirsty criminals? So he knows that no matter how much he might plead with Spike, there's nothing to be done about it. He can't rob that man of the pain he needs to move on. He was able to prevent it with Mayfa, but that doesn't mean he can solve it with Spike. I think the line that Spike says when leaving, "I'm not going there to die, I'm going to find out if I'm really alive," is amazingly cheesy. But I think it has a point to everyone, and to Jet, it's about how life feels now versus how it felt when his past was haunting him. Saying that he didn't feel pain when Alyssa left, only numbness, and carrying that for so long, that's an admission that the world wasn't vibrant for him, but dull. Everything he did was with an arm reminding him of the past, where they stopped watch whenever he needed to check the time. His mind was never free to truly take in the present moment, to feel it in full. That is, it's like he wasn't even really alive. So when Spike says this, what Jet hears is that truth, that the only way Spike lives is by rushing off into that danger. He either doesn't and lives in dull continuation, a fate similar enough to going and dying anyway, or he does, kills Vicious, destroys his past, and lives to finally experience the present in full again. The only option forward is this one step back. But knowing this doesn't mean liking it, and he's not entirely free of how he behaved in the past. Progression isn't linear. When Faye really starts to push the issue, talking about how Spike's probably already dead out there and forcing acknowledgement of the loss, Jet gets angry, grabbing her and yelling that yes, Spike was nothing but trouble and they'll be better without him, a forced good riddance to try and not feel the pain just like before. And then he can turn around and go out looking for confirmation about Spike, even from a mystic he finds nonsensical, clearly failing to convince himself that he doesn't care and hating his powerlessness, jumping back and forth. Like always, saying one thing but truly meaning a different one. And when Spike does return once more, alone despite meeting Julia again, and with that look in his eye and manner of truly lacking any care instead of just faking it, Jet knows what's happened and does the only thing he can. Laughs and jokes with him over one last meal. Maybe what he needed to do was ask the painful questions, to say he truly cares, to express that pain which marks importance, but he's not quite there yet, not with someone this important to him, and so he does this instead, gets one last moment in before the pain, and then goes on to ignore it. As Spike is flying away, Jet is polishing the ship, the same spot over and over again, pointlessly. No real goodbye, no true acknowledgement, just hints of it all and a task to dull the feeling. It is a terrible ending for everyone involved. Because of that, it's a great one, messy and complicated just like it should be. It's final but not final enough because none of them would let it be. It's painful but not painful enough because they've all gotten so good at avoiding pain. It's up and down, a lesson started but never fully learned, a commitment never broken but only because one was never made, because there's always an excuse. Anytime we think we've learned, something like this will always test us, a next step up against that resolve we've built. Human growth is fractured and messy, depending on time and place and situation and community and so much more. We could help someone else learn exactly what we failed to practice ourselves. We can say the words 10,000 times, but still fail to hear them when said to us. The hope is that eventually it sticks through all the effort, the mixture of reminding and forgetfulness. That it will settle in and Jet will realize the pain, accept it, understand it, and allow himself to move on. But it's also just as possible that he'll sit there and ignore that feeling, knowing how impending everything he learned is and so never moving from that spot. Sometimes when we learn the lesson, we also just learn how to avoid the results. It's up to us to wonder what happens to him, only with the hope that at least he knew what Spike needed to do and what his role was, and maybe that's a sign of acceptance to come despite all the backtrack. Can a man who kept himself purposely stuck in the past finally create a future, especially now that everything he loved is gone? Can we learn the lessons we need to without becoming obsessed? Can we keep a mind of the past and learn from it, but still be open to the future for those lessons to mean anything? That's what's left. Cowboy Bebop isn't a guide, it's just pointing out the ideas and providing the motivation to do it ourselves, to apply it to our own lives and situations as needed. No words are gospel because no situations are identical, so it's always left to us to learn the lesson and then figure out how to apply it. This can never be changed. I guess this is me saying my own worries and doing this all. That these words only mean what you can do with them to better your specific cases. For some of you, they'll be right, and for others, they'll be dead wrong. That's the nuance of our world and of Bebop's complex characters. That they have to embrace the uncertainty and find their own.